Alexander Hayes had everything men envied and everything women desired, or so it seemed. His towering glass mansion on the edge of the city looked like something cut straight out of a dream, yet the silence that haunted its wide marble halls was unbearable. Behind his name that commanded boardrooms and headlines, there was a man still bleeding from wounds that money couldn't heal. His wife's sudden death 2 years earlier had left him broken, turning his once warm home into nothing but polished stone and empty echoes. He worked late nights not out of passion but out of avoidance, drowning himself in deals and figures because it was easier than facing the loneliness waiting at home. That particular evening, fate decided to change everything. A meeting ended earlier than planned, and for once, he refused the temptation to stay buried in his office. He drove home through the city streets, unaware that the silence of his mansion was about to be disrupted. As his sleek black car rolled up the driveway, the motion sensor lights flickered on, bathing the mansion in silver glow. Alexander stepped out, expecting the same lifeless routine. But the moment he pushed open the door, he froze. From deep inside the mansion came a sound he had not heard in years, a child's laughter. At first, he thought it was an echo of memory playing tricks on him. His late son had once filled the house with joy before illness stole him away. Alexander's chest tightened, and he followed the sound with careful steps. The closer he got, the clearer it became. It wasn't a memory, it was real. In the grand living room, where chandeliers hung like jewels above polished floors, he saw something that knocked the air out of his lungs. A young boy, fragile but determined, was balancing on crutches. His face was pale yet radiant with joy as he struggled forward. Beside him knelt Isabella, the quiet housekeeper Alexander had barely noticed over the years. Her gentle hands hovered protectively, guiding him with patience and encouragement. "Just one more step, Daniel. You can do it," she whispered, her voice soft as a prayer. Alexander stood frozen at the doorway, watching the boy wobble but smile, watching Isabella's eyes shine with a warmth that his home had been starved of. He should have been furious at the intrusion, should have demanded answers, but all he could do was stand there in stunned silence, as if he had stumbled into a life that wasn't his. The boy finally noticed him. His eyes lit up, wide with curiosity. "Are you my dad?" he asked innocently. The words pierced Alexander like a blade. He staggered backward, unprepared for the weight of that single question. Isabella's face turned pale, panic flashing in her eyes. "It's not what you think, Mr. Hayes," she stammered. But Alexander wasn't angry. For the first time in years, he wasn't even thinking about business, wealth, or betrayal. All he saw was a child fighting against weakness, refusing to surrender. All he saw was life returning to the dead corridors of his mansion. Over the days that followed, Alexander learned the truth. Daniel was Isabella's son, born with a condition that made walking nearly impossible. She had been raising him quietly, keeping him away from the mansion during working hours so as not to disturb her employer. That night, her babysitter canceled, and she had no choice but to bring the boy with her. Alexander, arriving earlier than expected, had walked into a world he was never meant to see. Yet destiny had its reasons. The boy's determination reminded Alexander of his own late child, the courage, the spark, the refusal to give up despite the pain. Something inside him cracked open. He began speaking to Daniel, listening to his small stories, even driving him to therapy sessions. For the first time in years, Alexander felt a purpose that no fortune could buy. Isabella, initially cautious, saw the walls around him crumble. She saw not the billionaire, but the grieving man who had been too proud to show his wounds. As weeks turned into months, the mansion changed. It was no longer just polished stone and silence. It echoed with laughter, with footsteps, sometimes stumbling, sometimes strong. Alexander discovered that family wasn't always bound by blood, but by choice and sacrifice. Slowly, his bond with Daniel grew deeper, and with it, so did his feelings for Isabella. Her quiet strength, her ability to fight life's storms without bitterness, touched him in ways no empire of wealth ever could. One late evening, as the boy slept peacefully upstairs, Alexander stood with Isabella by the grand window overlooking the city lights. For the first time, he admitted aloud what had weighed on him for years. "I thought money made me invincible. But it couldn't save my wife, it couldn't save my son. I've lived like a ghost in this house, Isabella. Until you and Daniel walked in." His voice trembled, something his board members had never once heard. Isabella's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Sometimes life takes everything, just so it can give us something different, maybe even better. That night, Alexander realized he had come home early not by accident but by fate. The universe had pulled him back to his own doorstep to show him that redemption, family, and love often appear when least expected. And though he was still a billionaire, his true fortune stood not in bank vaults or boardrooms, but in the quiet smile of a child who once asked, "Are you my dad?" And in the woman who gave him the courage to answer, "Maybe I could be."